My father worked with a horse plough. His shoulders globed like a full sail strung between the shafts and the furrow. The horses strained at his clicking tongue. An expert, he would set the wing and fit the bright steel-pointed sock. The sod rolled over without breaking. At the head rig, with a single pluck of reins, the sweating team turned round and back into the land. His eye narrowed and angled at the ground, mapping the furrow exactly. I stumbled in his hob-nailed wake, fell sometimes on the polished sod. Sometimes he rode me on his back, dipping and rising to his plod. I wanted to grow up and plough, to close one eye, stiffen my arm. All I ever did was follow in his broad shadow round the farm. I was a nuisance, tripping, falling, yapping always. But today, it is my father who keeps stumbling behind me and will not go away. These first ones are all set, as you can see, well, you've only heard two, but there are going to be two or three more, set in the first place where I grew up. And it's not only a geographical place, but it's almost a place of feeling and some kind of security. And perhaps something of a secure feeling had to do with the fact that the house I grew up in, there were two women in it. There was my mother and my father's sister, who was a kind of a second mother. And this poem is a memory of my aunt baking bread. The 1940s in rural Ulster were, I suppose, still quite close to the rhythms of medieval life. And suddenly in the 1950s, with the modernization of all kinds of techniques in the farm and the improvement of rural electrification, for example, mains, water supplies and so on, everything changed. The pump at the back of the house wasn't the center of the world anymore. All those things which are, you know, very, very mythic things, like going to the water for well, were done naturally. And then they were over, and then they became literature and memory immediately. Sunlight, this is called. There was a sunlit absence. The helmeted pump in the yard heated its iron. Water honeyed in the slung bucket, and the sun stood like a griddle cooling against the wall of each long afternoon. So her hands scuffled over the bakeboard. The reddening stove sent its plaque of heat against her where she stood in a flowery apron by the window. Now she dusts the board with a goose's wing, now sits broad-lapped with whitened nails and measling shins. Here is a space again, the scone rising to the tick of 2 clocks. And here is love like a tinsmith's scoop sunk past its gleam in the meal bin. I'll just do a couple or three which are much more recent, but they are still in that very same place. This is called The Easter House, since it's coming up towards that time. I never quite knew what an Easter house was, but when we were youngsters there was always talk about an Easter house being built for us, and then Easter came and went and nothing happened. But it was a phrase that had immense potency and still has for me. So I called this poem The Easter House. Unseal the undisturbed. Go through rock silence, lime-sharp air, the acoustic galleries of sepulchre. Brush past the shaking draperies in the name Joseph of Arimathea. Go back to your Easter house behind the nettles. The sticks are burning in the open, the eggs boiling with whin blossom in a corner full of quiet smoke, and the intent breath of children playing with broken delf and lids in the middle of the day. They are in sanctuary, in the dream that Easter house had raised, in a marked-off, trodden area canopied with cow parsley. And was this all it meant? They are disappointed with its appointments. Cups with no handles, an old kettle, the tin blackening on flames that can't be seen because of the unclouded sun. No flute is going to sound for them. No angel out of smoke, like a dusty forkful settling on a rock, is going to seat himself, for them or you, on the makeshift hearthstone. This is another, it's in the same register, in more or less the same place. There was a railway ran through the farm, and as along railways, I suppose, everywhere, there were these telegraph wires. And when we saw the water on the telegraph wires and shores, we thought that that's the way the telegrams were being sent along the wires. It's called the railway children. When we climbed the slopes of the cutting, we were eye level with the white cups of the telegraph poles and the sizzling wires. Like lovely freehand, they curved for miles east and miles west beyond us, sagging under their burden of swallows. We were small and thought we knew nothing worth knowing. We thought words travelled the wires in the shiny pouches of raindrops, each one seeded full with the light of the sky, the gleam of the lines, and ourselves, so infinitesimally scaled, we could stream through the eye of a needle. This is called Davin on the Broke Road. Davin is a character in James Joyce's Portrait of the Artist as a young man who is up from the country. And he's one of the few people that Stephen doesn't absolutely lacerate every time he opens his mouth. Davin calls Stephen Stevie, which is a boldness that I suppose nobody else would have attempted. Only the meek and innocent Davin would have come out with it. But I identified with Davin to some extent, he being from the outback, playing hurley and coming up to the university and so on, meeting the likes of Stephen Dedalus. But Davin tells Stephen a story at one point in the book about coming home from a hurley match late at night and going along the dark road, which is always an occasion of sin in the Irish imagination. And the young woman inviting him in is telling him that her husband has gone to Cork, not to Cork, but to Cove, Queenstown, to leave her sister to the boat, and he could spend the night there. And of course, Stephen or Davin doesn't actually go in, but he looks back and sees a woman in the light at the doorway. It's a very kind of haunting dream image. And Stephen reflects on this, how the woman is a bat-like soul, he says, waking to consciousness of itself in darkness and secrecy and loneliness. This image of the woman and of Ireland itself coming to consciousness. So I take the bat-like image and I just use that scenario of Davin and the woman and the bat to link into a bat that I used to know as a youngster that flew under a bridge a lot. And we used to try to catch bats by putting caps on forks and trying to net them like that. But it always flew away towards a place called the White Gates, where a lot of teenage courting used to be done. So all that local geography is half necessary and half unnecessary. Davin on the Broke Road, a bat-like soul waking to consciousness of itself in darkness and secrecy and loneliness. You would hoist an old hat on the tines of a fork and trawl the mouth of the bridge for the slight bat thump and flutter. Skinny, downy webs, baby nails clawing the sweatband, but don't bring it down. Don't break its flight again. Don't deny it. This time, let it go free. Follow its bat flap under the stone bridge. under the Midland and Scottish Railway and lose it there in the dark. Next thing, it shadows moon-slicked laurels or skims the lapped net on a tennis court. Next thing, it's ahead of you on the road. What are you after? You keep swerving off, flying blind over ash pits and netting wire, invited by the brush of a word like peignoir, rustles and glimpses, shot silk, the stealth of floods. So close to me, I could hear her breathing. And there, by the lighted window, behind trees, it hangs in creepers, matting the brickwork. And now it's a wet leaf blowing in the drive, and now soft-deckled shadow convolvulus by the white gates. Who would have thought it? At the white gates, she let them do whatever they liked. Cling there as long as you like. There's nothing to hide. I just do another sequence of things. These are from earlier books. There's some poems that I don't often read. I don't know why nervousness drove me to perhaps read different ones in this homely occasion. This is a poem called Wedding Day. I don't know about America, but in Ireland there are more tears at a wedding than there are at a funeral, actually. It's little shocks of grief break out all over the place. That's true. Very wise. Wedding Day. I am afraid. Sound has stopped in the day, and the images reel over and over. Why all those tears? The wild grief on his face outside the taxi. The sap of mourning rises in our waving guests. You sing behind the tall cake like a deserted bride who persists, demented, and goes through the ritual. When I went to the gents, there was a skewered heart and a legend of love. Let me sleep on your breast to the airport. This is a set of 5 little short lyrics, I suppose you could call them. They are the bones of a story, or they've got vestigial traces of a story called Summer Home. It traces the rise and fall of an experience or estrangement or whatever you want to call it. Summer Home. Was it wind off the dumps or something in heat dogging us? The summer gone sour, a foul nest incubating somewhere. Whose fault, I wondered, inquisitor of the possessed air? To realize suddenly, whip off the mat that was larval, moving, and scald, scald, scald. Pushing the door, my arms full of wild cherry and rhododendron, I hear her small lost weeping through the hall that bells and hoarsens on my name, my name. Oh love, here is the blame. The lucent flowers between us gather in, compose for a May altar of sorts. These frank and falling blooms soon taint to a sweet chrism. Attend, anoint the wound. Oh, we tented our wound all right under the homely sheet, and lay as if the cold flat of a blade had winded us. More and more I postulate thick healings, like now, as you bend in the shower, water lives down the tilting stoops of your breasts. With a final unmusical drive, long grains begin to open and split ahead, and once more we sap the white, trodden path to the heart. My children weep out the hot foreign night. We walk the floor, my foul mouth takes it out on you, and we lie stiff till dawn attends the pillow and the maize and vine that holds its filling burden to the light. Yesterday, rocks sang when we tapped stalactites in the cave's old dripping dark. Our love calls tiny as a tuning fork. Perhaps something slightly merrier might be in order. There's a poem called The Otter. When you plunged, the light of Tuscany wavered and swung through the pool from top to bottom. I loved your wet head and smashing crawl, your fine swimmer's back and shoulders, surfacing and surfacing again, this year and every year since. I sat dry-throated on the warm stones. You were beyond me. The mellowed clarities, the grape-deep air thinned and disappointed. Thank God for the slow loadening. When I hold you now, we are close and deep as the atmosphere on water. My two hands are plumbed water. You are my palpable, lithe otter of memory in the pool of the moment, turning to swim on your back, each silent, thigh-shaking kick retilting the light, heaving the cool at your neck. And suddenly you're out, back again, intent as ever, heavy and frisky in your freshened pelt, printing the stones. This is called A Dream of Jealousy. I was thinking of calling it Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe, but although it does have a more exquisite touch to it than I usually can manage in a poem, it didn't quite warrant that extravagance, I think. So I just kept to A Dream of Jealousy. It was about a dream of jealousy. Walking with you and another lady in wooded parkland. The whispering grass ran its fingers through our guessing silence, and the trees opened into a shady, unexpected clearing where we sat down. I think the candor of the light dismayed us. We talked about desire and being jealous. Our conversation a loose single gown, or a white picnic tablecloth spread out like a book of manners in the wilderness. Show me, I said to our companion, what I have much coveted, your breast's mauve star. And she consented. Oh, neither these verses nor my prudence, love, can heal your wounded stare. This is called 3 sections from a 4-section poem called Fieldwork. I don't like the second section anymore. So it shows you how coherent the poem is that it really could be drop one section. It's a very modern kind of form. This is an open form. You can take out lumps. It's this kind of dreamy, faintly sensual set of images. That's really all it is. Fieldwork, that's true. When the sally tree is a willow tree. Where the sally tree went pale in every breeze. Where the perfect eye of the nesting blackbird watched. Where one fern was always green. I was standing watching you take the path from the gatehouse at the crossing and reach to lift a white wash off the winds. I could see the vaccination mark stretched on your upper arm and smell the coal smell of the train that comes between us, a slow goods, wagon after wagon full of big-eyed cattle. Not the mudslick, not the black weedy water full of alder cones and pockmarked leaves. Not the cow parsley in winter, with its old whitened shins and wrists, its sibilance, its shaking. Not even the tart green shade of summer, thick with butterflies, and fungus plump as a leather saddle. No, but in a still corner, braced to its pebble-dashed wall, heavy, earth-drawn, all mouth and eye, the sunflower, dreaming umber. Cat's piss smell, the pink bloom open. I press a leaf of the flowering currant on the back of your hand for the tight, slow burn of its sticky juice to prime your skin and your veins to be crisscrossed with leaf veins. I lick my thumb and dip it in mold. I anoint the anointed leaf shape. Mold blooms and pigments the back of your hand like a birthmark. My umber one, you are stained, stained to perfection. This is a poem called Song. Again, when you have a little fragment that you're not quite sure how to fit in anywhere, if you call it Song, you get away with it, you see. But of course, this is also a deeply pondered Ars Poetica also, as a matter of fact. And for all its short scope, there's a lot of literary joking packed into it. The conventional simile for a girl's lips in Old Irish and Old Welsh poetry was that her lips were like the rowan berry, very beautiful red-berried ash, the mountain ash. And the other thing that there's another allusion in this to one of Finn McCool's great remarks. Finn McCool, the legendary hero who worked around with his group called the Fianna. Somebody crept out of the shadows one night after they had eaten their venison on the hill on the side of Mount wherever, I was going to say Mount of Olives, Ben Bulben perhaps, and said, "What is the best music in the world?" And everybody gave their version of it. Somebody said it is the music of the stag hunt, or it is the music of the blackbird over the pool at Derry Cairn, or it is the music of the mass bell, of course. And then they turned and they said to Finn, they said, "Tell us, oh Finn, what is the best music in the world?" And Finn McCool said, "The best music in the world is the music of what happens." It's debatable, perhaps, but so Song is very short. A rowan like a lipstick girl. Between the by-road and the main road, alder trees at a wet and dripping distance stand off among the rushes. There are the mud flowers of dialect and the immortelles of perfect pitch. And that moment when the bird sings very close to the music of what happens. I'm struggling towards, you can see, a relevant kind of poetry now. It's hard to know what is the status of the innocent lyric, the pleasurable, pleasuring lyric, which just licks deep into its own resources, into sound, into form, into the first place of language. Just before I leave, I'm very fond of that kind of poem myself. I just read one more called The Guttural Muse. I got this idea that the generating thing for a certain kind of poem that I've written, or that has written itself for me, I should say, I suppose, it comes out of the dialect place in my voice even. And I got this notion of the dialect being menaced by too much public voice. Then one night I was spending a night in a hotel near the border between the Republic of Ireland and the north of Ireland, away in the middle of the country, and there was a disco going on. And here was this kind of terrific international rock music, humming through the jerry-built hotel, right? You know, 3 stories up, you could feel the whole thing throbbing with the rock band. And you thought to yourself, nothing is left, you know. The world is all homogenized. This music, this culture has ruined every local accent and everything, you know. Such thoughts, you didn't get to sleep on them. But suddenly, out, the music stopped and out they came out of the dance. And these kind of incorrigibly dialect voices all across the car park. And I thought, you know, God, terrific. The rhythm may be throbbing through the house, but there's something deep down there that is pretty unkillable. So I wrote this poem, The Guttural Muse. That seems quite an incoherent kind of introduction, but it's just where the poem came from. We had been tench fishing earlier in the day. There's a game that we sometimes play. You need to know the people that you're with before you can play this game. But and you need to have mutual friends and mutual enemies. But try to turn people you know into fish. What fish would he be, or what fish would she be, you know? So I had got an idea of myself as a tench, which is a soft, toothless fish that loves the mud. And sends up bubbles when it's feeding. The Guttural Muse, anyway. Late summer, and at midnight, I smelt the heat of the day. At my window over the hotel car park, I breathed the muddied night airs off the lake and watched a young crowd leave the discotheque. Their voices rose up thick and comforting as oily bubbles the feeding tench sent up that evening at dusk. The slimy tench, once called the doctor fish, because his slime was said to heal the wounds of fish that touched it. A girl in a white dress was being courted out among the cars. As her voice swarmed and puddled into laughs, I felt like some old pike all badged with sores, wanting to swim in touch with soft-mouthed life. From tench to oysters is but one step. Actually, I think I would prefer to be an oyster than a tench, but I'm not sure. This is about one of the happiest days I ever spent in my life, and because it was so perfect, I felt uneasy about it. The day. What right had we to such a good day, kind of feeling. Oysters is called. Our shells clacked on the plates. My tongue was a filling estuary, my palate hung with starlight. As I tasted the salty Pleiades, Orion dipped his foot into the water. Alive and violated, they lay on their beds of ice, bivalves. The split bulb and philandering sigh of ocean, millions of them ripped and shucked and scattered. We had driven to that coast through flowers and limestone, and there we were, toasting friendship, laying down a perfect memory in the cool of thatch and crockery. Over the Alps, packed deep in hay and snow, the Romans hauled their oysters south to Rome. I saw damp panniers disgorge the frond-lipped, brine-stung glut of privilege, and was angry that my trust could not repose in the clear light, like poetry or freedom leaning in from sea. I ate the day deliberately, that its tang might quicken me all into verb, pure verb. The other poem, this is the same kind of poem, the next one is, I just realized that after I had written it, and that it was the same kind of thing. It's about Chekhov, who went to the convict island of Sakhalin at the age of 30. And he left Moscow, where he had just become a great success, and left the salons and fulfilled some obligation in himself which he always felt. He called it paying his debt to medicine, this. But of course his forebears, I think it was his grandfather, had been a serf. And Chekhov never quite could forget that the world didn't end at the salon door. He, I think he is exemplary, almost in every way. I don't know even why I say almost. He is exemplary in every way, Chekhov. But one of the exemplary things he did was to drop it all, say literature, okay, but now we go to life. And he went and lived on the island of Sakhalin and researched into the conditions that the prisoners lived in, kind of subhuman conditions, really, very demeaning, if that isn't too fine a word for it. There's one of his photographs which I saw, which he took of a man wheeling a great ball to which his chains were attached. In other words, the man was cabled with this ball and chain, and when he wanted to move, he had to put the heavy iron ball into the barrow and wheel his own bondage with him. It's a tremendous image. Anyway, I suppose I should read the poem. Chekhov's friends give him a bottle of brandy to take with him. And after weeks of travel up to the north, he got as far as this convict island in this den of misery and sat down and he drank the brandy. And I just imagine the double feelings there of the luxury of the brandy, the affront of the brandy to what was all around him. It's really the lyric poem trying to survive in violent times. So he would pay his debt to medicine, but first he drank cognac by the ocean, with his back to all he travelled north to face. His head was swimming free as the troikas of Tyomen. He looked down from the rail of his 30 years and saw a mile into himself, as if he were clear water, Lake Baikal from the deck rail of the steamer. That far north, Siberia was south. Should it have been an ulcer in the mouth, that cognac the Moscow literati packed off with him to a penal colony, him born, you may say, under the counter? At least that meant he knew its worth. No cantor in full throat by the iconostasis got holier joy than he got from that glass, that shone and warmed like diamonds warming on some pert young cleavage in a salon, inviolable and affronting. He felt the glass go cold in the midnight sun. When he staggered up and smashed it on the stones, it rang as clearly as the convict's chains that haunted him. In the months to come, it rang on like the burden of his freedom to try for the right tone, not tract, not thesis, and to walk away from floggings. He who thought to squeeze his slave's blood out and waken the free man shadowed a convict guide through Sakhalin. I'll read a few examples of how I hope to make the pleasure in language face the trouble in life. This is a poem called North. I tried in this book, which came out in 1965, to try to drift one set of images across another. And that is one set drawn from Iron Age Europe, from the Viking ethos, from the bog culture of Jutland, where there were human sacrifices done locally, as it were, without much Aztec ceremony on the tops of pyramids. They were just dumped into bog holes in a less ceremonious way. That Iron Age thing drifted across the contemporary violence in the north of Ireland. The root thing in my mind was, but both of them were slightly sacral killings. There was a religious element or a religious element in some of the sacrifice and killing in the early Iron Age, and as there is in a kind of different way still, but not so different insofar as I think Irish republicanism is a territorial religion with a feminine goddess to whom the initiates or the devotees vow loyalty and for whom they will sacrifice themselves. At any rate, I, for better or worse, evolved a few poems out of that, and this is one called North, which is indeed just about what I'm trying to come to there. What does this artistic imagination do in face of a few plunderers and killers sailing into the bay? I returned to a long strand, the hammered shod of a bay, and found only the secular powers of the Atlantic thundering. I faced the unmagical invitations of Iceland, the pathetic colonies of Greenland. And suddenly, those fabulous raiders, those lying in Orkney and Dublin, measured against their long swords rusting, those in the solid belly of stone ships, those hacked and glinting in the gravel of thawed streams, were ocean-deafened voices warning me, lifted again in violence and epiphany. The long ship's swimming tongue was buoyant with hindsight. It said Thor's hammers swung to geography and trade, thick-witted couplings and revenges, the hatreds and behindbacks of the all-thing, lies and women, exhaustion's nominated peace, memory incubating the spilled blood. It said, lie down in the word hoard, burrow the coil and gleam of your furrowed brain, compose in darkness, expect aurora borealis in the long foray, but no cascade of light. Keep your eye clear as the bleb of the icicle. Trust the feel of what nubbed treasure your hands have known. They're all little tight, gnarled stanzas and hunched up feeling in all of them. This is another tight one called Punishment. And it came out of two images, okay, but more out of an unease and a nothing as strong as self-contempt, something slightly more than self-dissatisfaction. And that was that in the Northern Irish situation in the early 70s, there was a lot of killing and bombing and one thing and another, and a lot of mixed feelings about all of this. In this case, the mixed feelings surrounded the IRA's tarring and feathering of young girls in the ghettos in Belfast and in Derry. These lassies were presumed to have informed on the IRA because I suppose they were seen out with British soldiers. So whatever about the actual informing, there was that betrayal aspect implicit in the Catholic ghetto girls going out with the British soldiers, the enemy. And there was that kind of sexual rage against them, so they were tarred and feathered. But this linked up with a find that was made in one of these Jutland bogs of a girl who had had her head shaved, who was lying under stones. And according to this archaeological evidence and literary evidence from Tacitus, it would seem that she was also an unfaithful young wife, because this is what the Germani used to do to the girls that were a bit flighty in the village. They beat them out of with rods and buried them in the bog. So I thought to myself, well, if I had been there when they were beating this girl out of the village, what would I have done? Would I have said, stop? And I don't think I would have. Just as I did nothing one way or another about the girls who are being tarred and feathered, or about the rather overstated outrage at this tarring and feathering by people who would torture you in a prison anyway. So everything was mixed up. Punishment. I can feel the tug of the halter at the nape of her neck, the wind on her naked front. It blows her nipples to amber beads. It shakes the frail rigging of her ribs. I can see her drowned body in the bog, the weighing stone, the floating rods and boughs, under which, at first, she was a barked sapling that is dug up, oak bone, brain firkin, her shaved head like a stubble of black corn, her blindfold a soiled bandage, her noose a ring to store the memories of love. Little adulteress, before they punished you, you were flaxen-haired, undernourished, and your tar-black face was beautiful. My poor scapegoat, I almost love you, but would have cast, I know, the stones of silence. I am the artful voyeur of your brain's exposed and darkened combs, your muscles webbing, and all your numbered bones. I who have stood dumb when your betraying sisters, called in tar, wept by the railings, who would connive in civilized outrage, yet understand the exact and tribal, intimate revenge. This poem is called Exposure, and it comes out of that time. Oh, listen, no, we can't go on too much longer. This is very hot in here. I'll just read a couple more. It's late. I've been approaching this business from a different, more direct angle. I'll just read one of those and then the last one. I'm doing a sequence of poems set on an island in a place called Loch Derg, to which pilgrimages have gone for centuries. And these pilgrimages are penitential exercises to win indulgences for yourself, to free yourself from purgatory a bit earlier. That is the kind of doctrinal reason for doing it. Psychologically, people just love punishing themselves on the island, I think. And they fast and they pray and they walk around and do various things. And they get, I did the pilgrimage 4 times when I was much younger. And you get quite dozy and quite hallucinatory. So it is a wonderful place to meet ghosts in that case. So this is a poem set in this sequence of poems on this island. At this stage, the pilgrim is praying at the edge of the water. I had come to the edge of the water, soothed by just looking, idling over it as if it were a clear barometer or a mirror, when his reflection did not appear, but I sensed a presence entering into my concentration on not being concentrated as he spoke my name. And though I was reluctant, I turned to meet his face, and the shock is still in me at what I saw. His brow was blown open above the eye, and blood had dried on his neck and cheek. "Easy now," he said. "It's only me. You've seen men as raw after a football match." What time it was when I was wakened up I still don't know, but I heard this knocking, and it scared me, like the phone in the small hours, so I had the sense not to put on the light, but looked out from behind the curtain. I saw 2 customers on the doorstep and an old Land Rover with the door open parked on the street, so I let the curtain drop, but they must have been waiting for it to move, for they shouted to come down into the shop. She started to cry then and roll round the bed, lamenting and lamenting to herself, not even asking who it was. "Is your head astray, or what's come over you?" I roared, more to bring myself to my senses than out of any real anger at her, for the knocking shook me, the way they kept it up, and her whinging and half-screeching made it worse. All the time they were shouting, "Shop! Shop!" So I pulled on my shoes and sports coat and went back to the window and called out, "What do you want? Could you quieten the racket or I'll not come down at all?" There's a child not well. Open up and see what you've got. Pills or a powder or something in a bottle, one of them said. He stepped back off the footpath so I could see his face in the street lamp, and when the other moved back, I knew them both. But bad and all as the knocking was, the quiet hit me worse. She was quiet herself now, lying dead still, whispering to watch out. At the bedroom door, I switched on the light. It's odd they didn't look for a chemist. Who are they anyway at this time of the night? She asked, with the eyes standing in her head. I know them to see, I said, but something made me reach and squeeze her hand across the bed before I went downstairs into the aisle of the shop. I stood there, going weak in the knees. I remember the stale smell of cooked meat or something coming through as I went to open up. From then on, you know as much about it as I do. Did they say nothing? Nothing. What would they say? Were they in uniform, not masked in any way? They were barefaced as they would be in the day. Shites thinking they were the be-all and the end-all. Not that it is any consolation, but they were caught, I told him, and got jail. Big-limbed, decent, lantern-jawed, he stood forgetful of everything now except whatever was welling up in his spoiled head, beginning to smile. You've put on weight since you did your courting in that big Austin you got the loan of every Sunday night. Through life and death, he had hardly aged. There always was an athlete's cleanliness shining off him, and except for the ravaged forehead and the blood, he was still that same rangy midfielder in a blue jersey and starched pants, the one stylist on the team, the perfect, clean, unthinkable victim. Forgive the way I have lived indifferent. Forgive my timid, circumspect involvement, I surprised myself by saying. Forgive my eye, he said. All that's above my head. And then a stun of pain seemed to go through him, and he trembled like a heat wave and faded. And the last one is also set at the end of the pilgrimage. If you can imagine the worst man you could possibly meet in the 1980s, this would be putatively set now. A man who would embarrass you most coming off a pilgrimage, I think, would be the man whose centenary we are celebrating this year, Mr. James Joyce. In this section, it is the shade of Joyce, whose name isn't mentioned, who appears. The thing begins coming off the island. There is a ritual for leaving the island also. You sing a hymn which goes, "Hail, glorious St. Patrick, dear saint of our isle. On us, thy dear children, look down with a smile," I think that's it. Bestow a sweet smile, that's right. Bestowing is a great matter. So that's where it starts out. And, well, my problem, as you can see, is this business of the act, the lyric act, and the communal link-up. That's just the question, and there isn't really any answer. However, Jimmy had his way of dealing with it. Hail, glorious St. Patrick! The pilgrims in the boat were singing when the throttle opened, and spray came gusting, and each lazy note warped as it lifted off in gusts of wind. Close packed, loaded deep, we sang our way across the choppy water like a band of starved monks out on the western sea. But we had done with peregrinatio. Loch Derg flowed up, flowed under, back, away astern, and Station Island was a mirage now already as we readied for the land, nearing and widening up beyond the bow. Tertiarima, I'm telling you. Like a convalescent, I took the hand stretched down from the jetty, sensed again an alien comfort as I stepped on ground, to find the helping hand still gripping mine, scribe cold and bony. But whether to guide or to be guided I could not be certain, for the tall man in step at my side seemed blind, though he walked straight as a rush upon his ash plant, his eyes fixed straight ahead. Then I knew him in a flash out there on the tarmac among the cars, wintered hard and sharp as a blackthorn bush. His voice, fluent with the vowels of all rivers, came back to me, though I did not speak yet. A voice like a prosecutor's or a singer's, cunning, narcotic, mimic, definite as a steel nib's cursives, quick and clean. And suddenly he hit the litter basket with his ash plant, saying, "What I did on my own was done for others, but was not done with them. And this you have failed to learn. Your obligation is not discharged by pious exercise. When I refused to take the sacrament, I made my life an instrument of grace, so all of you had more abundant life. I was at nobody's service the way you are at theirs." And the ash plant went jerking backwards towards the landing place where the last pilgrims were still hanging about. This was a backsliding enterprise. Get back in harness. The main thing is to write for your own joy in it. Cultivate a work lust that imagines its haven like your hands at night, dreaming the sun in the sunspot of a breast. You are fasted now, light-headed, dangerous. Take off from here, and don't be so earnest. Let others wear the sackcloth and the ashes. Let go, let fly, forget. You've listened long enough. Now strike your note. It was as if I had stepped free into space, alone with nothing that I had not known already. Raindrops blew in my face as I came to. Old father, mother's son, there is an entry in Stephen's diary for April the 13th, a revelation set among my stars. That day is my birthday, and those words are vagitus in my ears, the collect for a new epiphany, the feast of the Holy Tundish. Who cares, he said, anymore? The English language belongs to us. You are raking at dead fires, a waste of time for somebody your age. That subject people stuff is a cod's game, infantile, like your peasant pilgrimage. You lose more of yourself than you redeem doing the decent thing. The way of the blunt, sleek dolphin has to be your way. Swim out on your own and fill the element with signatures on your own frequency. Echo soundings, searches, probes, allurements, elver gleams in the dark of the whole sea. The shower broke in a cloudburst, the tarmac fumed and sizzled. As he moved off quickly, the downpour loosed its screens round his straight walk. Thanks very much. Sorry to keep you so long.